our shirt on Teespring.
The Trump administration recently initiated a significant move against Harvard University. It attempted to revoke the institution's certification in the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, or SEVP. This program is absolutely crucial for universities wishing to enroll international students in the United States. The SEVP certification acts as a gateway, permitting educational institutions to issue the necessary documentation that international students require to apply for visas. Without this certification, a university effectively loses its ability to attract and retain students from across the globe. This action, therefore, represented a direct and potentially crippling blow to Harvard's international character and its global academic engagement, a hallmark of prestigious institutions worldwide. The implications extend far beyond just one university, signaling a potentially hostile environment. The decision to target Harvard, one of the world's most renowned academic institutions, sent immediate shockwaves through the higher education community. The Department of Homeland Security, under the guidance of the administration, was the agency spearheading this effort. The formal notification from DHS indicated an intent to withdraw Harvard's SEVP certification. This was not a minor administrative adjustment, it was a fundamental challenge to the university's operational capacity concerning its international student body. The very foundation of Harvard's diverse academic community, enriched by scholars and students from numerous countries, was suddenly placed under severe threat. This move raised immediate questions about the motivations behind such a targeted and aggressive posture from the federal government. The SEVP is not merely a bureaucratic formality, it is the very mechanism that underpins the legal presence of international students in the U.S. for Harvard, which boasts a significant contingent of students and scholars from abroad. The revocation would mean an inability to issue new I-20 forms. These forms are essential for prospective international students seeking F-1 visas. Furthermore, it cast a dark shadow of uncertainty over the status of currently enrolled international students. The administration's action was perceived by many as a punitive measure, potentially aimed at curtailing the influx of foreign talent and ideas, or perhaps to exert pressure on an institution often seen as critical of its policies, thereby creating a chilling effect. The timing and nature of this administrative maneuver suggested a deliberate escalation in the ongoing tensions between certain political factions and the academic world. Universities like Harvard are often portrayed as bastions of liberal thought, making them targets for administrations seeking to reshape the cultural and intellectual landscape. By aiming at the SEVP certification, the administration chose a powerful lever, one that could inflict substantial damage not only to Harvard's international student numbers, but also to its global reputation and its research collaborations. The move was less about regulatory compliance, it seemed, and more about sending a strong, assertive message to the academic elite, a message of dominance and control over institutional autonomy. The immediate impact of revoking Harvard's SEVP certification would have been devastating for its international student enrollment. Harvard, like many leading U.S. universities, relies heavily on its ability to attract top talent from around the world. These students contribute significantly to the academic environment, research endeavors, and the overall cultural diversity of the campus. Without the ability to admit new international students, entire cohorts for upcoming academic years would be compromised. This would lead to a sudden and drastic reduction in the international student population, fundamentally altering the composition of the student body and diminishing the global perspectives available within classrooms and research labs, a loss that cannot be easily quantified but is deeply felt. The consequences would extend beyond just the incoming classes. Current international students, numbering approximately 5,000 at Harvard, would face an uncertain future. While the administration's initial focus might appear to be on new enrollments, the destabilization caused by such an action could create a hostile environment, prompting existing students to consider transferring to institutions in other countries. Furthermore, around 2,000 recent international graduates participating in optional practical training, a program allowing them to work in the U.S. in their field of study, would also be cast into a state of limbo. Their visas and work authorizations are tied to their student status and the university's SEVP certification, creating widespread anxiety. The financial implications for Harvard, while perhaps secondary to the academic and human costs, are also considerable. International students often pay full tuition fees, providing a significant revenue stream that supports various university programs, scholarships for domestic students, and research initiatives. A sharp decline in international enrollment would inevitably lead to budgetary shortfalls, potentially affecting the quality and scope of education and research offered by the university. This financial pressure could force difficult decisions regarding program funding, faculty hiring, and infrastructure development, further compounding the damage inflicted by the loss of international talent and diversity in its academic pursuits. Moreover, the ripple effect on the university's global standing would be profound. A university's ability to attract a diverse and international student body is a key indicator of its global reputation and influence. If Harvard were perceived as unable to protect its international students, or as being targeted by its own government, its appeal to prospective students and scholars worldwide would diminish. Competing universities in other countries such as Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia would undoubtedly seize the opportunity to recruit talent that might otherwise have chosen the United States, thereby weakening America's position as a global leader in higher education and innovation across various fields. In response to the administration's aggressive move, Harvard University did not remain passive. The institution promptly filed a lawsuit, challenging the legality and motives behind the attempt to revoke its SEVP certification. Harvard's legal team argued forcefully that the administration's decision was not based on legitimate regulatory concerns, but was instead a retaliatory act. They contended that the move was a direct consequence of the university's exercise of its First Amendment rights, including its freedom of speech and its autonomy in academic governance. This assertion frames the conflict not as a mere administrative dispute, but as a fundamental battle over constitutional principles and institutional independence from governmental overreach. The lawsuit detailed several grounds upon which Harvard believed the administration's actions were unlawful. Beyond the First Amendment violations, the university argued that the decision violated its due process rights. Proper procedure and fair hearing are cornerstones of administrative law, and Harvard alleged that these were disregarded. The university also claimed that the administration failed to follow established procedural law in its attempt to decertify. The lawsuit painted a picture of an arbitrary and capricious decision, driven by political motivations rather than a genuine assessment of Harvard's compliance with SEVP regulations, thus undermining the rule of law itself. Harvard's legal documents emphasize the immediate and irreparable injury the university and its students would suffer if the SEVP revocation were allowed to proceed. This harm extended beyond financial losses or enrollment numbers. It encompassed the damage to academic freedom, the disruption to students' lives and careers, and the chilling effect on open discourse and critical inquiry. The university maintained that the administration was attempting to coerce compliance with demands that would fundamentally undermine its independence and academic integrity. This legal challenge was therefore positioned as a defense not just of Harvard, but of the broader principles that safeguard higher education in a democratic society. This legal confrontation was not an isolated incident. Harvard pointed to a pattern of behavior from the administration, suggesting that the SEVP action was part of a larger campaign. The university had previously sued the Trump administration over significant cuts, amounting to billions of dollars, in federally funded research grants. This prior conflict provided context for Harvard's claim of retaliation, suggesting that the administration was using its regulatory powers to punish institutions perceived as uncooperative or critical. The lawsuit thus sought to expose what Harvard viewed as an abuse of power, aimed at silencing dissent and imposing ideological conformity on academic institutions through punitive measures. The critical turning point in the immediate crisis came with the intervention of the federal judiciary. U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs, presiding over the case in Massachusetts, stepped in to assess the legality of the administration's sudden move against Harvard. Recognizing the potentially severe and immediate consequences of revoking the SEVP certification, Judge Burroughs acted swiftly. She initially issued a temporary restraining order that effectively blocked the Trump administration's decision. This order provided a crucial, albeit temporary, reprieve for Harvard and its international student community, preventing an immediate shutdown of its ability to enroll and support these students. Following the initial temporary restraining order, Judge Burroughs extended this protective measure. Her decision to extend the order, announced on Harvard's commencement day, May 29, 2025, underscored the seriousness with which the court viewed the situation. The judge indicated her intention to issue a longer-term preliminary injunction. The purpose of such an injunction would be to maintain the status quo, meaning Harvard could continue to operate its international student programs normally while the full legal merits of the case were thoroughly examined. This judicial action signaled that Harvard's claims had sufficient weight to warrant a more prolonged period of protection against the administration's directive, providing much-needed stability. The judge's intervention highlights the essential role of the judiciary as a check on executive power. In situations where administrative actions are perceived as arbitrary, retaliatory, or unconstitutional, the courts serve as a vital avenue for redress. Judge Burroughs' willingness to grant the temporary restraining order and then extend it suggests a preliminary assessment that Harvard's lawsuit presented serious questions about the administration's conduct. The court's involvement transformed the dispute from a unilateral executive decision into a contested legal battle, subject to judicial review and due process, thereby upholding fundamental legal principles that protect institutions from overreach. A hearing was scheduled for the week following the extension of the temporary restraining order, indicating the court's commitment to a thorough and expedited consideration of the matter. This upcoming hearing would allow both Harvard and the government to present their arguments in more detail. The judge's decision to maintain the current state of affairs allows Harvard to continue its functions and prevents the immediate displacement or barring of thousands of international students. This judicial oversight is crucial, not only for Harvard, but also as a precedent for how such disputes between government agencies and academic institutions might be handled in the future, ensuring fairness and adherence to legal standards. Section 5. The government's narrative, justifications for drastic measures. The Trump administration, primarily through statements made by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, articulated a series of grave accusations against Harvard University to justify its attempt to revoke the SEVP certification. These justifications painted a picture of an institution allegedly fostering an environment detrimental to U.S. national interests and societal values. Secretary Noem cited concerns about what she termed pro-terrorist conduct occurring under the university's purview. This highly charged accusation immediately raised the stakes of the confrontation, suggesting that the administration viewed activities at Harvard as posing a direct threat to national security, a claim requiring substantial evidence. Furthermore, the administration accused Harvard of encouraging and allowing anti-Semitic and anti-American violence. These are serious allegations that tap into broader societal anxieties and political debates. By framing the issue in terms of anti-Semitism and anti-American sentiment, the administration sought to garner public support for its actions and portray Harvard as an outlier institution failing to uphold fundamental American values. The government also pointed to alleged racist diversity policies at Harvard, a critique often leveled by conservative voices against affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives prevalent in higher education, thereby adding an ideological dimension to its claims. Another significant accusation involved alleged coordination between Harvard and officials of the Chinese Communist Party. The administration claimed that this coordination occurred in the context of training programs that ultimately undermined U.S. national security. This allegation plays into existing geopolitical tensions and concerns about foreign influence, particularly from China, within American academic and research institutions. By linking Harvard to the CCP, the administration aimed to cast doubt on the university's loyalty and its role in safeguarding sensitive information and national interests, thereby attempting to legitimize its drastic intervention in the university's affairs. In its formal notification, DHS gave Harvard a 30-day window to respond to these allegations. The university was tasked with either proving it meets all SEVP requirements or contesting the decision through an established administrative process. Secretary Noem reiterated the agency's intent to withdraw certification if Harvard failed to provide a satisfactory response. This ultimatum underscored the administration's resolve, framing its action as a necessary enforcement measure against an institution it deemed non-compliant and problematic. The severity of these accusations, however, also invited scrutiny regarding the evidence supporting them and whether they were a pretext for other unstated objectives. Section 6. Campus in turmoil. The human impact of uncertainty. The administration's aggressive posture and the ensuing legal battle have had a deeply unsettling effect on the Harvard community. The actions have instilled profound fear, concern, and confusion among both faculty members and students, particularly those from international backgrounds. The threat to Harvard's SEVP certification created an atmosphere of instability, directly impacting the daily lives and academic pursuits of thousands. For international students, the possibility of their visas being jeopardized or their academic futures disrupted is a source of immense stress. This anxiety is not conducive to learning or research, creating a hostile environment where academic focus is difficult to maintain. The emotional distress experienced by students has been significant, with reports indicating a tangible impact on their mental health. Many international students have made substantial sacrifices, financial, personal, and emotional, to study at Harvard. The sudden prospect of their educational journey being forcibly terminated, or their ability to complete their studies and engage in post-graduation work experience being denied, is a heavy burden. Students have reportedly already begun facing visa denials or revocations at U.S. consulates abroad, and some are actively exploring options to transfer to universities in other, more welcoming countries, fearing the uncertainty surrounding their status in the United States. Faculty members, too, are affected. Many research projects and academic departments at Harvard rely on the contributions of international students and scholars. The potential loss of this talent pool would not only diminish the quality and scope of research, but also disrupt ongoing projects, some of which are critical to scientific and medical advancements. Furthermore, faculty members who are themselves international or who closely mentor international students share in the anxiety and frustration. The situation creates an environment where academic collaboration and global engagement, core tenets of a leading university, are threatened by government policy, leading to a sense of disquiet. The broader campus climate has also suffered. The accusations leveled by the administration, regardless of their veracity, can tarnish the university's reputation and create internal divisions. The focus shifts from education and research to crisis management and legal battles. This distraction diverts valuable resources, time, energy, and funds that could otherwise be invested in academic programs and student support. The uncertainty also sends a discouraging message to prospective international students and scholars worldwide, potentially deterring them from choosing Harvard or other U.S. institutions in the future, which is a significant loss for the intellectual vibrancy of the campus. Section 7. Echoes in Academia, Broader Implications for U.S. Higher Education. The legal showdown between Harvard and the Trump administration carries implications that resonate far beyond the confines of Cambridge, Massachusetts. This case is being closely monitored by universities and colleges across the United States, particularly those with substantial international student populations. If the federal government can successfully target a prominent institution like Harvard and attempt to revoke its SEVP certification based on contested allegations, it sets a chilling precedent. Other institutions might fear similar actions if they are perceived as critical of government policies or if their campus activities draw the ire of powerful political figures, fostering an environment of self-censorship. The dispute raises fundamental questions about the extent of the U.S. government's power to dictate university policies, including enrollment strategies and campus governance. Academic freedom and institutional autonomy are pillars of the American higher education system. The attempt to use SEVP certification, a program ostensibly designed for security and immigration compliance, as a tool to exert ideological pressure or retaliate against an institution, challenges these principles. This could lead to a dangerous politicization of the SEVP process, where certification decisions are influenced by political agendas rather than objective criteria, thereby undermining the integrity of the program itself. International students across the U.S. are also watching the Harvard case with considerable apprehension. The actions against Harvard contribute to a perception that the United States is becoming a less welcoming and stable environment for foreign scholars. This perception, whether fully justified or not, can have a significant impact on international student enrollment trends nationwide. A decline in international students would not only affect university finances and campus diversity, but also diminish the U.S. capacity for innovation and research, as international students often play a crucial role in STEM fields and contribute significantly to the American economy post-graduation. as highlighted by experts like Fanta Aw of NAFSA. The global academic landscape is also shifting in response. Foreign universities, particularly in countries with more stable and welcoming immigration policies for students, are reportedly intensifying efforts to recruit students who might be reconsidering their plans to study in the US, including those currently at or aspiring to attend Harvard. This creates a competitive disadvantage for American institutions and could lead to a long-term brain drain if the US is no longer seen as the premier destination for global talent. The Harvard case, therefore, is not just an isolated incident but a potential harbinger of broader shifts in international education and America's standing within it. Section 8, a climate of coercion, contextualizing the confrontation. The Trump administration's attempt to revoke Harvard's SEVP certification does not exist in a vacuum. It is part of a broader pattern of pressure and criticism directed at elite universities. President Trump himself has publicly criticized Harvard on platforms like Truth Social, deriding the university for hiring what he termed woke, radical left, idiots. He even suggested imposing a cap on the percentage of international students Harvard could enroll, proposing a limit of 15% of the student body. Such statements from the highest levels of government contribute to a climate where administrative actions against universities can be interpreted as politically motivated attempts to enforce ideological conformity. Beyond rhetoric, the administration has also taken concrete financial actions against Harvard. Reports indicate that approximately $3 billion in federal grants and contracts with the university have been cut or frozen. These funds are often vital for crucial medical and scientific research initiatives, including areas with significant public benefit. The withholding or reduction of such funding can be seen as another lever of control, punishing institutions for perceived transgressions or for failing to align with the administration's agenda. This financial pressure, coupled with the SEVP threat, paints a picture of a multi-pronged effort to exert influence over the university's operations and research priorities. Legal experts have weighed in on the situation, suggesting that the administration's apparent ideological targeting of Harvard could potentially violate the university's First Amendment rights. If it can be demonstrated that the SEVP revocation attempt was indeed retaliatory for Harvard's exercise of free speech or its academic policies, it would represent a serious infringement on constitutional protections. The historical context of the U.S. government screening international students for potentially unsafe viewpoints, while a long-standing practice for security reasons, could be manipulated or expanded to serve partisan political ends, which raises serious concerns for academic freedom and open inquiry. The administration's justifications, including accusations of pro-terrorist conduct and improper ties with foreign entities, are presented as legitimate concerns for national security and institutional integrity. However, critics argue that these claims may be exaggerated or used as a pretext to attack institutions that represent dissenting viewpoints. The challenge for Harvard, and for the courts, is to disentangle legitimate regulatory oversight from politically motivated coercion. The outcome of this struggle will have significant implications for the balance of power between the government and academic institutions, and for the protection of intellectual freedom in an increasingly polarized environment. Section 9. The Unfolding Saga, An Uncertain Future. The legal battle between Harvard University and the Trump administration over the SEVP certification is far from over. While Judge Allison Burroughs' temporary restraining order and her intent to issue a preliminary injunction have provided immediate relief, the substantive issues of the case are yet to be fully litigated. The upcoming hearing, scheduled for the week following May 29, 2025, will be a critical juncture. Both sides will have the opportunity to present more detailed arguments and evidence, and the court will further consider the merits of Harvard's claims of unlawful retaliation and violations of its constitutional rights by the current administration. The ultimate resolution of this case will carry profound significance. If the courts rule in Harvard's favor, it could reaffirm protections for academic freedom and institutional autonomy, potentially deterring similar actions against other universities. It would send a message that regulatory powers cannot be wielded arbitrarily or for punitive political purposes. Conversely, a ruling in favor of the administration could embolden further interventions in university affairs, potentially leading to a more constrained and politically subservient higher education sector. the stakes are incredibly high, extending to the very nature of academic inquiry and institutional independence in the United States. The uncertainty surrounding the case continues to affect the international student community, not only at Harvard, but across the nation. Prospective students may hesitate to apply to U.S. universities, fearing sudden policy changes or a hostile environment. Current students remain anxious about their status and future prospects. This ongoing instability is detrimental to the U.S. reputation as a global leader in education and research, a reputation built over decades of attracting and nurturing talent from all corners of the world. The long-term damage to this standing could be substantial if the perception of an unwelcoming climate persists due to such governmental actions. This confrontation highlights a critical tension in contemporary American society: the relationship between governmental power and independent institutions, particularly those dedicated to knowledge creation and critical thought. The Harvard case serves as a potent reminder of the fragility of academic freedom and the need for robust legal and societal defenses against encroachment. As the legal proceedings continue, the academic world, and indeed all who value intellectual liberty, will be watching closely, understanding that the outcome will shape not just the future of Harvard's international programs, but potentially the landscape of higher education and free expression in the United States for years to come.